I hate to do this to you because I know I made you listen to Dianne Feinstein last hour, but how'd you like to hear a little Chucky Schumer? Let's go back, and I know nobody wants to hear Chuck Schumer, but I think it's important that we do. Not because he's going to say anything that we don't expect, but because I want you to get an idea of just how intensive the massaging of this issue is from the supporters of the administration. And the questions that are asked by people like Senator Feinstein, like Senator Schumer, allow columnists like Dana Milbank to turn around and then write their story that, oh, there's no scandal here. Well, the real scandal is what happened during the Bush administration. So let's listen a little bit to Senator Chuck Schumer's questioning of Attorney General Holder earlier today at the Senate Judiciary Committee.
I'm going to go back to the Fast and Furious issue. And there's been, of course, a lot of focus on the present administration's dealings with Fast and Furious. But what has been sort of missing, certainly in the House investigation, is that it didn't start with the Obama administration. It started with Alberto Gonzales and then continued with General Mukasey. And if we want to get to the bottom of it and find out what's went wrong, I think we have to look at the whole thing. So my questions are somewhat related to that.
All right, can we stop for just a second? I love this argument because it makes no sense whatsoever. Schumer is saying, well, this goes back to Alberto Gonzales. This goes back to Michael Mukasey. Wait. If your line is that Holder shouldn't have known about this, I mean, again, it's 115,000 employees. He can't keep track of all of the operations that are going on. Why wouldn't you cut the same slack for Alberto Gonzales or Michael Mukasey? Again, if you want a level playing field, that's great. Let's have a level playing field here. But if you're going to say that attorney generals under the Bush administration should have known, but it's okay that Holder didn't, or if you're going to say that perhaps the attorney generals under Holder did know, and again, it looks like there's evidence that with wide receiver, the attorney general at the time, Michael Mukasey, was briefed. And as a matter of fact, not only was our attorney general briefed on this, but Mexico's attorney general was briefed on this as well, which didn't happen in Fast and Furious. Schumer is applying a double standard here. It's whatever the Obama administration did is fine, because we got to go back and we got to look at those crumb bums in the Bush administration and what they did and what they should have known. All right, let's hear a little more.
Mr. Attorney General, and thank you for being here. As we learned last week, some briefing material on Operation Wide Receiver, the Bush-era version of Fast and Furious,
and is not
was
a Bush-era
prepared for
version.
the Attorney General Mukasey shortly after he took office in preparation for a November 16th meeting with Attorney General Eduardo Medina Mora of Mexico. That wasn't the beginning. It's clear now that ATF agents and line prosecutors in Tucson as early as 2006 discussed an ATF proposal to provide guns to criminals, quote, without any further ability by the U.S. government to control their movement or future use, unquote. We know this operation was likely part of Operation Wide Receiver, in which 350 guns were purchased by straw purchasers. And as your production of material continues, it's plausible we'll find out that this strategy was discussed maybe even before 2006. The briefing material from 2007, which was prepared for General Mukasey, stated that, quote, ATF has recently worked jointly with Mexico on the first ever attempt to have a controlled delivery of weapons being smuggled into Mexico by a major arms trafficker. While the first attempts at this controlled delivery have not been successful, the investigation is ongoing. The ATF would like to expand the possibility of such joint investigations and controlled deliveries, since only then it'll be possible to investigate an entire smuggling network rather than arresting a simple smuggler, unquote. That's in the memo from General Mukasey, which I think was made public Friday. Then emails indicate that ATF's Assistant Director for Enforcement reviewed this briefing language. So I want to try and figure out who saw the briefing material. So I'm going to ask you about some of the names there.
Can we stop for again just another second? I just find it ridiculous. So transparently ridiculous that Senator Schumer is looking there with his eyeglasses down, studying And it looks like there's this briefing paper here that talked about letting these guns go and then briefing the Attorney General in Mexico. You know what a real, honest-to-goodness question would be, as I adjust my glasses, after reading that information? Mr. Attorney General, if this was the process during the Bush administration where Michael Mukasey was apparently informed of this operation, what's different about your administration? Why do you say that you were not informed? Why do you say that you never had this knowledge that apparently was given to the Attorney General in previous administrations? I would note again as well, and this is something that Schumer won't point out, that the memos, those same memos that he discussed, show the then U.S. Attorney in Phoenix, Arizona, saying that he had a moral objection to doing any sort of gun walking operation. And again, these memos discuss the fact that Mexican law enforcement was involved, was aware, was briefed. And in fact, the briefing paper that was written for Attorney General Mukasey asks the Attorney General to bring up the operation when he meets with Mexico's Attorney General. They wanted him to talk about this. Compare that to Fast and Furious. And you're going to have to do it because Senator Schumer won't compare it to Fast and Furious. Compare this to Fast and Furious, where the ATF attaché to Mexico was not informed, was not allowed to talk to the Attorney General about what was going on. So again, under the Bush administration, it seems like what you have reading these memos is an actual process. Now, again, if the process was ignored by agents like Bill Newell, then we've got a problem. But it seems like there was a process by which approval was sought, approval was denied to simply allow guns to walk, but that the ATF and DOJ at the time wanted to pursue, in cooperation with Mexico, operations where guns would be allowed to cross the border, and the Mexican law enforcement, who was aware and cooperating and collaborating with U.S. law enforcement, could then move in and interdict the guns. The briefing paper that was given to Attorney General Mukasey, which again Senator Schumer doesn't mention, wanted Mukasey to talk about this with Mexico's Attorney General and say, look, we need you, Attorney General Medina Mora in Mexico, we need you to come up with a group of officers who are incorruptible, who you know are honest, who you know that can be trusted, that they can work with our guys so that we can allow this operation to happen. So if that happened in the last administration, why the heck didn't it happen in this one? Again, questions that Senator Schumer apparently not interested in asking. All right, let's hear just a sliver more from the senator from New York.
That are listed. These are listed at the top of the briefing memo prepared for General Mukasey for the November 16th meeting with Mora. So my first question, simple one. What position did Matthew Friedrich hold on the date that is on the meeting memo? Do you recall that? You may not.
I don't know, Senator.
He was Deputy Chief of Staff to Attorney General Mukasey. And Kevin O'Connor, I won't ask you that one, he was Associate Attorney General. You may have recalled that. So I think we can infer that both Mr. Friedrich and Mr. O'Connor were likely to have received the material, either before or at the meeting with Attorney General Moore. And given that, as well as the fact that the meeting was with General Mukasey's counterpart in Mexico, I think we can infer that General Mukasey is highly likely to have attended the November meeting and seen this material. Are you aware of whether General Mukasey reviewed the memo?
I don't know if he did or not.
Okay. And I don't want to vouch for anyone's attendance at the meeting. Obviously, you weren't there, but I want to be clear. I want to be clear about that premise. But with that caveat, are you currently able to say whether there were any other high-ranking DOJ officials who attended the November 7th meeting, 2007 meeting?
I just don't know, Senator, who attended the meeting.
Okay, but it wouldn't have been beyond the pale for other top officials to have been briefed on this, either in preparation for the meeting or otherwise. Is that correct?
It's certainly possible. I just don't know.
All right, let's stop for a second here. What you've seen with Senator Schumer, again, if you know this case and you've been following this case, you may be a little confused. Why is the senator bringing up what happened in 2007 when, again, the Attorney General was briefed on this operation in which Mexican law enforcement was supposed to be a part of this plan that allowed the guns to cross the border, and the Mexican law enforcement officials who were aware that this was taking place were then supposed to interdict the guns. They weren't able to do so, so the follow-up was, we want to do this again. We want to make sure that on Mexico's side, we've got the law enforcement officers on hand that can actually move in and interdict these guns. So when you, General Mukasey, talk to the Attorney General, can you bring up this operation and discuss the importance for Mexico to put together this team of officers? You may be wondering why the heck Senator Schumer is talking about this, given that none of that happened in Fast and Furious. I fear the answer is kind of slimy. Because I fear the answer is that Senator Schumer knows darn well the major differences between Operation Wide Receiver and Operation Fast and Furious. But he also knows that most of the American public do not. And this is, I hate to say it, my pet theory tonight is that this is an attempt by the senator to conflate and confuse the two in the minds of the American public to minimize the real importance of what happened in Operation Fast and Furious, to try to obfuscate, knowing that these hours of testimony from the Attorney General, in most cases, if they were covered at all by the mainstream media, were going to be condensed down into 30, 45, maybe a 90-second package on TV. Like I said, NBC Nightly News didn't even bother covering the Attorney General's testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee. But I think Senator Schumer, look, I've heard rumors that he's fairly media savvy. I've heard rumors that he really likes the camera and that he knows how the press works. I know. Cameron's looking at me like I'm crazy. I know. I'm saying. I've heard rumors to that effect. If the senator is media savvy, he knows how the news packages are going to be written. And he knows that if he can get that sound bite that makes it sound like the same thing that was happening in Fast and Furious, which took place entirely under the Obama administration, was occurring a couple of years earlier during the Bush administration. Well, gee, is it beyond the pale to think that the senator would, again, try to confuse the issue in the mind of the average American who may not be following the story as closely as you and I are? Again, if that's the case, if that's what the senator's doing, if he's just trying to confuse the issue to take some of the pressure off the administration rather than getting to the bottom of this, it's shameful.